Silence! Silence!
Lord have mercy.
Neanderthal, that was an insult. Do you realize that the most racist scientific community ever were 19th century anthropologists? They're the ones that set up the race and the this, and white male humans were at the top of the evolutionary ladder, and blacks and everybody else were lower, still evolving, closer to the apes. So watch what happens. In the 1990s, now that we can do genetic tracking and things, now we do genetic tracking, the world found out that Europeans are between 1% and 3% Neanderthal genetically, and Africans are 0% Neanderthal. So in the 1990s, research papers started coming out talking about how creative and imaginative the Neanderthals must have been and how they used tools. A complete facelift of the Neanderthals that started at the time they learned this.
Somebody done told you wrong, punk.
White people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681.
Never left the African continent. They are 100% Homo sapien. Now, you know what a Homo sapien is? Homo sapien is modern day human. And whilst white people, they're not actually 100% Homo sapien. They have anywhere between 2 to 9% Neanderthal DNA. So this white guy got really offended by my statement. But this statement is not in any way false or meant to offend. It's just simply based on me being a stickler for facts and knowledge. This statement was based on the new evidence and research from white anthropologists. So if you're going to get mad at me for stating facts, you then have to go and get mad at all these scientists and anthropologists too. That Caucasians or white people have anywhere between 2 to 9% Neanderthal DNA. This is now the school of thought that all anthropologists are sticking to based on genetic studies. You know how it goes. Studies and research changes all the time, but this is what they're sticking to now, and they've been sticking to it for the last couple of years.
Now, finally, the secret can be revealed.
The immediate response I had was that I couldn't believe my eyes. I had never expected that, even under the most extraordinary scientific fantasy, that modern human beings could return to an animal state.
In scientific terms, it was the equivalent of finding living, breathing fossils. Human beings who had never made the evolutionary leap of standing upright. The quest to find out why took a team of scientists on an amazing journey and raised profound questions about what it is to be human.
This picture, you're looking at a teenager with a 7-inch tail.
Isn't that great? I love this.
You don't find that suspicious?
If you sequence the DNA of people living today, you can see that all people outside of Africa carry between 2 and 5% Neanderthal DNA fragments.
They were once painted as clumsy cave dwellers, brutes with heavy brows, doomed to fade into the ice. But ancient DNA now tells a far more unsettling story.
They basically are like the closest species or subspecies of us. How much they were actually different, how much we want to see them as different from us, how we can define being human.
Neanderthals were not a simple branch that snapped off the human tree. They were part of a braided river that still runs through our veins. What if the European caveman story was never the full picture? Today, we'll reveal the sharpest insights from ancient DNA that recast Neanderthal origins as a tangled, continent-spanning saga. The riddle in the bones. For centuries, the Neanderthals were treated as history's primitive footnote, a species too crude, too limited, and too doomed to matter. They were cast as Europe's cavemen, a branch of humanity that splintered off and froze in place while we evolved beyond them. Textbooks labeled them as an evolutionary mistake, creatures that belonged to the caves and vanished into extinction. But buried deep within the layers of soil and bone, something didn't fit. The fossils refused to stay silent. Their bones carried secrets that told a far more complex story, one that science was never prepared to hear. The first signs of a change in perception occurred in Europe itself. Neanderthal remains discovered in places like Spain's limestone caves, French fields, and Croatian valleys cried out for a reconsideration of such people as primitives at all. They were already able to control the fire, to build more.
For hundreds of years prior to the so-called I want to show you guys some of the documents showing the white races of Europe, and we can get a better perspective as to who the Moors were fighting. These are the albinos and the beasts of Europe, and the Moors were fighting these people for hundreds of years prior to the so-called I want to show you guys for hundreds of years prior to the so-called I want to show you guys some of the documents showing the we can get a better perspective as to who the Moors were fighting. These are the albinos and the beasts of Europe, and the Moors were fighting these people for hundreds of years prior to the so-called I want to show you guys.
When we talking about being RH positive, first of all, we have to understand what is RH positive. RH means rhesus monkey blood. There's an actual monkey called rhesus monkey, a real freaking monkey. And when you go into science, you'll see that Caucasians share 98% of their DNA with monkeys. So we have to ask ourselves, where did the compatibility become genetically for a monkey to sexually reproduce with a human? There never was one.
White people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681.
You don't find that suspicious?
Caucasian Nation original history.
Now for a discovery which may surprise you. Scientists have found that most of us still have a little bit of a Neanderthal inside us. A study into the DNA of the human subspecies found that they interbred with modern humans tens of thousands of years ago, and their genetic mark remains today. BBC's Palab Ghosh has more on these extraordinary findings.
This is a skull of a modern human, and this is from a Neanderthal. Look closely and you can see that this one has a slightly longer brain case. Most scientists...
Truth is stranger than fiction.
The first strong evidence that there was interbreeding with people like the Neanderthals, and it means that modern humans indeed...
The Moors were fighting these people.
Argument about that. So when you do the research and you find out we ain't never lived in no cave, but the only history that is our origin is we come from the rich...
Peace, y'all. Yes, I'm gonna do it. I take knowledge actually were written. How come you don't learn about this Pope? So my education to you is for you to know that there was a different Pope. Eastern half was
made. As you can see in the depictions up above, the Neanderthals were hairy, reddish, ape-like creatures before they mixed their genetics with that of the Homo sapien, began to mutate, and became the Cro-Magnon and Troglodytes. So a lot of times you see the Cro-Magnon and the Troglodytes and you think that's a Neanderthal. But no, that's a hybrid with a little bit of human DNA and Neanderthal chromosomes. You get the Cro-Magnon. But the Neanderthals were hominid, primates, no different than a chimpanzee, no different than a orangutan. Study. For the more you study, the more options you will have. And the more options definitely means the more power. You ever heard of the legend of the big-headed scientist known as Yakub? He took the DNA of the original man and woman, the Homo sapien, the nine-ether being, and he spliced it and grafted it with that of the hominid, creating the Neanderthal and its spawn. This is a legend that goes back thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. Study For the more you study, the more options you have.
You don't find that suspicious?
Came on this earth 6,500 years ago at the same time that these modern Europeans just magically popped up. So who was created in the Garden of Eden? And who is this God that created them? And why is God's chosen people to the 5% Neanderthal? And how could that possibly be? How did these people who just popped up 6,500 years ago have Neanderthal DNA when Neanderthals were said to have died out thousands of years prior to 6,500 years ago? How did these people here, genetic lineage showed up 6,500 years ago? How is it they are 2 to 5% Neanderthal? Where did they get the Neanderthal DNA? Didn't Neanderthals die out? Now, modern Europeans showed up in Europe 6,500 years ago, and right here the Bible interpreted literally suggests Adam and Eve lived roughly 6,000 years ago. If these Jews are God's chosen people, how the hell did they end up being 2 to 5% Neanderthal? And how the hell is it? See, genetic research indicates that Jewish populations, particularly those outside of Africa, so populations within Africa, have no Neanderthal DNA, but the Bible would tell you that all people, Africans, descend from Adam and Eve. So why is it black people are not part Neanderthal, whereas Jewish people, who are God's chosen people, why are they part Neanderthal? If we all descend from Adam and Eve. And see, I'll just pull up, if Westhoff got to say anything about that, I'll just pull up the geneticist and see him buck dance and try to tap dance around the fact.
White people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681.
Another coon. Damn coons. I gotta do a coon analysis and a coon screening.
It only takes a little bit of white brainwash to activate the coon chip in the average Negro.
White people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681. We learn from this history that white people were built upon the idea that British had of themselves as white, as Christian, as freeborn, as deserving of rights and privileges from which others can be denied. To this day, white people have not been defined as a matter of law to this day. This history teaches us that white is the tool by which laborers were divided. Those who shared the same living conditions, the same opportunities, now experience ourselves as more connected with Paris Hilton than with our African American neighbor. The first Congress of the United States determined 1790 that in order to become a naturalized citizen of this new republic called the United States of America, one had to be white. This was valid law in the United States until 1952. You had to be white to be a U.S. citizen. 1952.
Visit shop.mrwelltraveled.com or click the link in the bio to get the book. Every day is Juneteenth.
White people